Now it is time we would like to open the IGES Open Forum towards the low-carbon societies, what is needed after Cancun, with Ms. Christina Figueres, UNFCCC Executive Secretary. I would now like to introduce the Director of Jusen Asuka, Director IGES Climate Change Group Professor, Tohoku University. He will be serving as the moderator this morning.
お忙しい中、どうも。
Thank you very much for your attendance, despite your busy schedule this morning. I'll be serving as the facilitator of this program. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Jusen Asuka, Director of IGES Climate Change Group. I also am a professor at Tohoku University. I would like to try my best facilitating this session to make the contents of this program as rich as possible. We would first be listening to the presentation by Ms. Christina Figueres, Executive Secretary of UNFCCC, before having a discussion with the panelists. As you are well aware, today's program is being streamed or webcasted live. We have started off this program in Japanese, but the English version of this program will also be uploaded onto our website as well. So again, I really look forward to having a very active and meaningful discussion this morning. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite Ms. Christiana Figueres, Executive Secretary of UNFCCC. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. 拍手をお願いします。
Please welcome her with a round of applause.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Is this on? Yes? Yes. Good morning, and thank you very much first to the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies. Thank you for your kind invitation, and also thank you very much to IGES for the partnership that we've had over so many years with the UNFCCC Secretariat that has been very helpful, not just to the Secretariat, but to so many people around the world. And thank you certainly for the opportunity to address you this morning. Friends, if I may start by telling you a story. Once upon a time, when the world was still young and innocent to the realities of climate change that were to emerge in the following decades, Japan stepped up to the plate and led the way on climate protection. As a result, the only operational multilateral protocol that binds nations to the promise of a stable atmospheric future bears the name of the city in Japan that represents the soul of Japan to the rest of the world. You, Japan, helped shape that mechanism that have made it work, and they now run to a significant degree on your hard efforts. You have invested in 13% of the 2,800 approved CDM projects over the years and more into JI. You led countries to put deep faith in technological innovation and access, in capacity building and the transfer of knowledge, and in the market mechanisms that would help determine carbon dioxide abatement, where it was cheapest and most efficient. There is an old proverb that says, beginning is easy, continuing is hard. And that certainly applies to the international process. While the Kyoto Protocol got off to a very good start, over the years, it started to become clear that efforts were nowhere sufficient to fulfill the promise of climate protection. It will be impossible to stabilize concentration unless all countries are on board. No international agreement has ever been perfect, ever been without loopholes and flaws, even the ones with all the favorable circumstances on their side. So, in the realization of the weaknesses of the Kyoto Protocol, we kept trying to shape something better and to get all countries to pull their weight. Now we have the Cancun Agreements. The Cancun Agreements are a crucial point in the evolution of international efforts to address climate change. I have called the Cancun Agreements a big step for the community of nations and yet a small step for the planet. Let me explain. The Cancun Agreements are a big step for the community of nations for three main reasons. First, the Cancun Agreements represent the most far-reaching collective effort the world has ever witnessed to reduce carbon emissions and to build a system holding all countries accountable to each other for those emission reductions. All industrialized nations have made their reduction pledges official and have committed themselves to develop low-carbon development plans or strategies. 37 developing countries, including all large developing countries, and I underscore all large developing countries, have made formal their nationally appropriate mitigation actions, known as NAMAs, which zero in on deviation from business as usual emissions by 2020 and are encouraged to develop low carbon growth strategies. Secondly, the agreements boast new institutions to boost technology cooperation, financing, and adaptation. A technology mechanism will be fully operational by 2012 and will support the innovation, development, and spread of new technologies. A Green Climate Fund will provide long-term financing to projects, programs, and policies in developing countries through thematic funding windows. That constitutes the most far-reaching package of support for developing countries to address both mitigation and adaptation. Thirdly, Cancun is the strongest signal governments have ever sent to the private sector that the future of economies will be low carbon by committing to a maximum temperature rise of 2 degrees Celsius with a review toward 1.5 degrees Celsius in the near future. Now, the agreements form a solid foundation for scaled-up climate action plan. However, for all its achievements, the Cancun Agreements are only a small step for the planet because Cancun did not yet put the world on a safe path. No agreement was reached on the year in which global emissions need to peak, although science tells us that global peaking in 2015 and a 50% reduction compared to 2000 levels by 2050 is needed to achieve the 2-degree limit. And the level of ambition currently on the table amounts to only 60% of what is needed to limit the temperature to the agreed 2 degrees Celsius. On top of that, the 2-degree increase is in fact not sufficient to guarantee the survival of the small island states. Clearly, the agreements have opened up a bottom-up approach to mitigation, and we have no idea if this will be enough to meet the 2-degree maximum temperature rise, or if we will need a top-down international agreement to complement the bottom-up approach. In Cancun, countries also agreed to indicate a second commitment period under the Kyoto Protocol. Most countries want the Kyoto Protocol to continue. A few countries are less keen on this. Others are of the view that certain elements of the protocol, especially predictability, the compliance system, the flexible mechanisms, and the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities are principles that must continue to be upheld and be integrated into any further mitigation agreements elsewhere. Ultimately, governments need to decide on this at the next UN Climate Change Conference in Durban, especially in view of avoiding a gap between the first and a possible second commitment period under the protocol. In this context, Durban is also the last opportunity to provide clarity on the carbon market before the end of the commitment period. Durban needs to build on Cancun, not only on the new institutions, but also in terms of increasing certainty of the international framework. The Kyoto Protocol is the only historical experience that we can all learn from. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, beginning is easy, but continuing is hard. This is perhaps as true for continuing an international process as it is with respect to Japan's 25% target. It is an ambitious target, a target that shows clear leadership, but it was possibly easier set than followed through. Nonetheless, I urge Japan to stick to this target, not least because it is testimony to the new direction that economic growth in Japan is set to take. The target is premised on participation by all large emitters in a global climate change regime. I emphasize that under the Cancun Agreements, all large emitters have pledged to control their emissions, even though developing countries do not have the same obligations under the convention, and this will not change anytime soon. However, in the context of participation by all large emitters, Japan's 25% target is testimony to clear strategic economic thinking, which will create economic advantage well into the future. Next to that target, Japan's new growth strategy will clearly put Japan on a cutting-edge path to low carbon growth. And this is where the 25% target and the new economic strategy mesh together. Japan is synonymous with technological innovation. You are trendsetters, from fashion and music to motor vehicles, energy efficiency, and clean energy technology. You hold the world's fascination. You, China, and the United States are the top 3 ranked countries in terms of research and development for innovation. And it is precisely technology, innovation, and the development of low-carbon energy sources that form the key to fighting climate change while pursuing national growth. Japan stands to gain in economic competitiveness against its close rivals when it comes to energy and environmental technology, particularly in a carbon-constrained world. An ambitious target and low economic growth will move Japan towards increased energy security, especially in financial terms. To illustrate, if oil prices average $100 a barrel, and that is what we have now, Japan spends 3% of its GDP on oil imports alone. Moving forward, Japan needs to examine renewable energy sources as a source of its energy in the face of potential energy insecurity. And in terms of the bigger picture, the 25% target and the new direction for economic growth are important for international competitiveness. In 2010, all G20 economies and others have initiated or completed the development of long-term economic growth strategies strongly based on low carbon growth.